Good evening and welcome to Live at 5 with me, Raj Doshi. I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and I'm ever so sorry about the little delay that we did have, a little technical glitch, but it's all sorted now, so thank you. I'd like to welcome our guest today on the show, Tim Schwass, a City of Perth Lord Mayoral candidate. So thank you so much for joining us today, Tim.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a little icebreaker again, because a lot of you guys commented on last week's show and you really enjoyed that, to get to know the guest that was on. So we're going to do that with Tim today. So we've got some fun questions we're going to ask him. We're going to put 2 minutes on the buzzer, and then we're going to try and get through as many as we can. So are you ready, Tim?
I am. There's no lifeline, no ability to pass.
No, you'll be just fine. So here we go. There we go, the buzzer goes. So what food do you crave most often?
Oh, pizza.
Which song reminds you most of your life?
Oh, I'm not sure. I might have to pass on that one. Yes.
Okay, if you could meet any historical figure, either living or deceased, who would you choose and why?
Oh, Henry Thoreau. I read a lot of his stuff. He speaks English. A lot of the other people that I would like to meet, English is not their first language, so it wouldn't be much point meeting them. So, yes, I'll go with Henry David Thoreau.
Excellent, thank you. What is your most memorable holiday that you've ever been on?
Well, I've had some great trips in China down the Yangtze River, and yes, that's pretty good there. There's some tremendous country in the east of the west of China. The national parks there, it's absolutely amazing. I've been to Tibet. That's something to be recommended if you can get there. That's probably one of the more memorable. Yes.
Excellent. And what is your proudest accomplishment?
Proudest accomplishment? Well, I'd like to say there's so many, but I fear that there's so few. We're surviving, I suppose. I've had a few near-death experiences, and I nearly died of tuberculosis, believe it or not.
Wow.
Many years ago. Oh, it wasn't that long ago. I was about 23, 24. That was an effort to survive that. Everyone thought I was going to die, including me.
Wow.
And I survived. So it's a very good disease to die of. If you ever get a choice what to die, I'll go for tuberculosis in the lungs. There's no pain, and you just feel like you're going to die, and you're quite lackadaisical about it, which is one of the symptoms that if you read up about it, they say. Looks unwell.
You're here with us. You're here with us now, and you're fit and well, so that's the most important.
No cough, and I'm good.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Tim. Appreciate it. So you've recently retired as a magistrate for the Children's Court, and you've been there for almost 30 years. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Wonderful. You've also worked with the Legal Aid Commission in Broome, and prior to that, you spent time with the Welfare Department as a lawyer. Is that right?
Yes, 10 years with the Welfare Department. Kept on changing its name, which I used to play my role in. But I went to Broome after 10 years of dealing with child abuse cases, mostly in staff training. I went to Broome for the quiet life. And the weekend we drove into Broome, the Australian Navy towed in the first 6 Indonesian fishing boats, and there were 72 clients in the waiting room when I arrived at work in the morning. Wow. The fisheries officers were next door, and there were 72 clients who couldn't speak English, of course. Most of them couldn't speak Bahasa Indonesian, and they were charged with Commonwealth and state offences, which nobody in Australia had ever been charged with before. So much for the quiet life. It's very exciting, and of course it's all international law, which is a subject that you normally do at university to make up a number of subjects you have to do, never expecting to deal with it, because Australia's got no real neighbours, as it were, and New Guinea, which fairly tame as far as international law matters are concerned. And there it was, I was cast into middle of fine legal arguments about Commonwealth waters and state waters and how you determine which was which and what have you. So it was a fascinating thing. And of course, I had nobody to turn to ask, because nobody knew any better than me, except the academics. And of course, the academics, you know, they're sort of colourful characters and they think they're valuable, but usually they're of no use to anybody. But suddenly, the academics were the only people I could turn to, and they were very generous in providing me with free opinions, and the Legal Aid Commission wasn't going to pay for opinions, so they gave me some valuable assistance. In fact, one of them, Peter Johnson, flew up and appeared as my junior when we started arguing the matters, because he was so fascinated with the application of matters that he'd been lecturing on for years and never expected anybody to have to use.
Wow, fantastic. And how long, how long were you in Broome for then? About 10 years, did you say?
2 years, 2.5.
2 years.
2.5 years it was in total.
Mm-hmm. So you've been back in Perth, and what did you do sort of with your time in Perth as in the roles that you've done?
Well, I spent nearly 30 years with the children's court based in Perth, which of course involves travelling down as far as Mandurah, you know, on a regular basis, and doing the suburban children's court, and occasionally travelling all around the state to do particularly care and protection applications, as they call child abuse cases, removing children from their parents, in essence.
It's quite an intense role. So in terms of...
Yes.
Yeah. So in terms of your pursuit for the Lord Mayor role, what kind of things do you think you'll be able to bring to the city and to the people, and what sort of attributes and things do you think are important when they are going to be selecting a Lord Mayor for Perth later in the year?
Oh, well, undoubtedly, my strong suit is my legal background. The English have a website devoted to wannabe politicians, which in England is, from your accent, you're perhaps familiar with, and they have 5-year terms over there, so being a politician's a big thing, and you're sort of stuck in the job for at least 5 years, or you miss out for 5 years, come back in 5 years' time, have another go. And they say, after having considered the matter at length, presumably, that the best skill set you can have is a legal background. And if you don't understand the law, you're going to struggle. So I'm familiar with legislation. I know how to find the legislation. I know how to interpret it. I know how it works with the regulations. And interpreting legislation and the decided cases, not that there's a great many in local government, but there are some, is crucial. And of course, the reason why there's been this inquiry, which is still dragging on, is because perhaps, given the snippets we've seen in the newspaper, people have forgotten what the law is, and the fact that that underpins everything that people in local government do, not only the mayor and the councillors, but also the staff. And of course, the criminal law applies, and there's some ex-employees of the City of Perth who are doing jail time because they thought that the law perhaps didn't apply to them and they can get away with it. So you need to understand that, and if you do, you've got a good basis on which to operate. You don't have to wonder what the role of the mayor is. It's clearly set out in the City of Perth Act, which is a modern act as far as acts go. It's 2016, and clearly sets out what the role of the mayor is, and that's basically to represent the ratepayers and to ensure good government, it says, meaning good governance. The words are interchangeable as far as I can see. And the fact that the City of Perth got lost, resulting in this $6 million inquiry, is a result of them moving away from good governance. And I don't think I'll have any doubt, or there'll be no doubt, that I can ensure that there's good governance, because I'll keep on bringing things back to the legislation.
Absolutely. So as well as sort of the governance and the legislation, Tim, can I ask sort of what your opinion and thoughts are around the community element of the role as well? What do you feel that you would be able to do?
Well, good governance is not just a trite phrase. It has a determined meaning, and it sets out what it constitutes. And the first thing is participation, and that is that people, in this case, the ratepayers and the residents and the visitors to Perth, need to participate. And the role of providing good governance is to ensure that they do contribute. The purpose of the mayor is not to impose their ideas on the council. Bear in mind, the mayor's got no power other than decisions made by the council, but rather to discern what it is that the ratepayers and occupiers and visitors want, and do their best to achieve that. Bearing in mind there are competing interests for the limited resources. So it's all very straightforward in terms of applying the law and participation and transparency and consensus orientation, which is a big thing, and which we've seen more of in recent times since the COVID-19 thing. It's unprecedented. The National Cabinet, which they've even included New Zealand on the last few days, which would have been unthinkable a few months ago. It was unthinkable that there'd be a National Cabinet where they actually got on and made sensible decisions. So it's a matter of getting that responsiveness and transparency and inclusiveness, people feeling that they are involved, and accountability, of course. It needs to be clear why you've decided for this and as opposed to that. So you need to set out your reasons and explain to the people who are dissatisfied why you, as a council, decided matters in a particular way. And that's what I'm used to doing, is giving a decision and contested matters and listening to both sides, making sure you understand both sides, and then applying that to the criteria that are used to determine a matter. Make your decision in a timely fashion, which is another thing about good governance. Delayed decision is not a good decision. You have to make it in a timely manner. And at the moment, of course, there's largesse of the federal government in trying to stimulate the economy, and it's important that the city of Perth gets its hand out for everything that's going, and all that the federal government need is to be persuaded that it's going to a good cause, that is stimulating the economy and giving people what they want and what they need. So when I started out on this mission to become the mayor, the situation was completely different. It's now a different challenge, more of a challenge, which is probably more exciting, and there'll be more consensus. And I've experienced in my career with the law that usually it's females normally are much better at reaching a consensus. When you had a female prosecutor and a female defence counsel, the chances of a matter, criminal matters, being resolved was that much higher, whereas men tend to stick to their adversarial role and enjoy the stoush rather than working towards a sensible resolution of a matter. So there's a lot of information in all that good governance, and that's what I'm placing my faith in, that people appreciate that this inquiry has been all about a lack of good governance, and it's something that the report will no doubt detail, and it better be a very good read, given that it's cost everybody about $6 million, not counting the cost of the commissioners and what have you. So 30th of June, hopefully the Minister for Local Government, after he's had a quick look at it himself, will release it to the public and everybody who's interested.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Now, I have a few questions from our members. So I'm going to go through them, and I've literally just taken them as they are. So I haven't amended or changed them in any way. So we have a question from one of the East Perth community group members asking, it would be great to know what Tim's strategy is in managing antisocial behaviour and homeless people's issues in Perth City and in East Perth. What do you propose to implement to overcome these challenges and provide Perth residents a more safer living environment?
Well, homelessness is a big thing, and is one of the matters that I'm very keen on. I always have been. A lot is known about homelessness, and it comes under, it's called different things in different places, but basically it's called Shelter First, as WA applies it. There is an alliance between all the players, and my view is that it really doesn't matter what people's motivation are for dealing with the homeless, whether it's because it detracts from their business or they have a genuine empathy with the people who find themselves homeless. It doesn't really matter. The fact is that it is known what needs to be done, and that is, of course, it sounds trite, but it's what the research is, that people need to be provided with a home first before you start dealing with their fairly obvious problems that individuals have. They need to be all treated as individuals. City of Adelaide treat everybody as individuals. They have their name, they have a photograph of them, and they deal with each one. Perth seems to be a little bit behind, but hopefully we'll catch up. And of course, with this COVID-19, 20 people ended up in the hotel for 28 days. And of course, surprise, surprise, the upshot of it was, apart from a few that couldn't handle it and left, those who were there getting shelter, their lives turned around. They suddenly had an address where they could have stuff sent. And the essence of it, of course, is you have to have people supporting them so that it's not a matter of saying, look, you need to go and make an application for this. You have the person from the welfare there. You have doctors on hand. The person needs medication. Why aren't you taking your medication? Well, somebody stole it. They may well have sold it, or they may have, in fact, had it stolen. So they say, well, look, you don't need to do anything. You just stay there. There's a doctor here. He will check your health department records, which are readily available, of course, in the medical profession, as you probably know. And they ring the local chemist and send the script through, and the medication's delivered. And the person says, thank you very much. And they say, well, look, just to make sure there's no trouble, we'll give you the medication, one tablet at a time every night as per the prescription. And that's done. And they say, what about your money? And they say, well, I can't apply for Centrelink, I haven't got an address. We've got one now. No need to go down there. This lady here is from Centrelink. She'll help you fill out the form, and the money will be sent here. Now, of course, what needs to happen is that you need to have one person or one organisation coordinating that. And in Perth, they got that. They got it all set up. And then, of course, the social distancing meant that it had to be closed. So you need a command post, which is run sort of not quite on military lines, but not far from it. And everybody is directed to that. And all the numerous agencies that have been doing their own thing in the past are all asked to become part of that, and everybody does the thing. And so instead of being too much food available from the agencies that provide food on some days and none on others, perhaps at the weekend, it's all coordinated so that there's a sensible way of dealing with it. And there is the provision in the Local Government Act for local laws to be passed, which is used in some places in WA to deal with homelessness and what have you. And my view is that if it's done properly, there should be laws in place that should probably never be used, but they're there as a backup. So that when you see people, as you do, clearly intending to simply camp in the Hay Street Mall, they've rolled out their swag and they've got their suitcase there and everything, you say, look, you can't camp here. And you need to go to a camping ground, or if you wish, you can come down to our facility where you can stay the night. There's a safe room and everything in the room to lock your stuff away in and everything. And what are you doing? Are you on holiday? Have you got stuck in Perth, or been thrown out of your accommodation, or what? And then you start working on it. And as we all know, there's a number of people who get stuck in Perth. They come from the country, particularly Aboriginal people, can't get back to where they belong or want to go because of lack of money. They've lost their social security payments because they should be in Mikatharra. And arrangements can be made, you know, we'll spring for the ticket on the bus, you know, when do you want to go? Let's get it organised. So there's so much that can be done, and it should be done, and I see absolutely no reason why in a relatively wealthy place like Western Australia, Perth in particular, it can't be done. And there's local laws to back it up. People who, out of defiance or for whatever reason, want to take pride in sleeping in the Hay Street Mall, they will be moved on. And if they choose not to be moved on, the police will become involved, and the police will provide them with accommodation for the night. And hopefully when the people sober up and become sensible, adequate arrangements can be made to find somewhere that's acceptable to them for them to live. So I'm big on homelessness, and it's one of those matters that needs to be elevated. And I think we should make sure that WA leads the way, Perth in particular. Every city's got homeless people, and in some places it's dealt with much better than others. There's no point just chasing them from one place to another. You need to provide sensible, practical, acceptable alternatives, and you need the resources there, the mental health people there that can provide the assistance as and when it is needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that answer. The next question is, what plans do you have to encourage businesses to invest their money into Perth, and why would someone choose Perth over your Sydneys and your Melbournes and places over east?
Well, there is a real risk, of course, that Perth can become a ghost town. You know, about a third apparently of the shops are now empty. That's the figure. And unless Perth's very careful, nobody will come to Perth. People will go to the suburban shopping centres where it's all nice and clean. You park your car under cover, it's safe there. Nobody breaks into your car, and the car's not out in the hot sun. And the shops that are in Perth, David Jones and perhaps Myers, if they reopen, are all in the shopping centres. So you need to make sure that it's attractive to not only the people in WA but international. Now, what we have got is, of course, the weather, and why people would go and live in Melbourne, given the weather, I've no idea. But of course, the reason why people go to Melbourne is the place hums. You know, the restaurants there and the public entertainment and everything, you know, has to be experienced to be appreciated. And there's absolutely no reason why Perth can't do that. And it's important that it be done, because otherwise people in Western Australia won't want to come to Perth. There's no reason. You know, if Northbridge is not enhanced and extended and kept humming, nobody will come to Perth. So it's important that you know, the homeless are dealt with. When I say dealt with, they're provided with homes. That's what the Shelter First is all about. And that we maximise the desirability of the weather and the clear blue skies and the clean air. And with this COVID-19, of course, I don't know quite how tourism's going to figure. You know, whether you get asked at the airport and how you're feeling, you've got a cough, go away. But who's going to allow people from America, where I heard on the television today that they're thinking that 3,000 deaths a day would probably be acceptable if it means that the economy can reopen. Now, who in their right mind would welcome an American if there's 3,000 people dying every day in America? It's just not going to happen. So, and people have to come to Perth knowing that it is safe. You're not going to get COVID-19. And quite how that's done is for others to decide. But if they come to Perth and find the shops are shut, and the homeless people are begging from them, and worse, demanding with ministers, they're not going to come to Perth. They're going to go home and tell their family, Perth's a terrible place. So the one of the roles of the mayor is to be an ambassador. It's all very well saying, look, the mayor's got to be an ambassador for Perth, but you really have to have a place that you can be proud of and have some justification and advocating and acting as an ambassador, talking the place up. People talk. Most people make their decisions about where they go for holidays, where they live, from talking to others. They don't believe the glossy publications. They will ask around. People have been there before and they know what the deal is. So I see no reason why we can't, challenge Sydney and Melbourne, to have the restaurants open a bit longer and more variety and people on the street actually enjoying themselves and music and the like.
Yeah, like you said, we've got the weather for it, so
yes. So we can burn Melbourne off just on their weather alone. They've got no show if we get our act together.
Excellent.
And students, we need to have students. Adelaide, the square mile that comprises the city over there.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've been there lately, but the place is full of students from all over the world. And in Perth, we've got none. There's a few that catch the bus to the various universities. There's a lot of students like living in the city, but there's no university there. There's plenty of room to do all that, and of course students are great in terms of bringing liveliness to an area or a city. They provide regular demand for the cheap restaurants and what have you. I went to Otago University in New Zealand, in Dunedin, which is a university town. The city's had 100,000 people for about 120 years. Yeah. And the reason for that is as the university got bigger, manufacturing dropped off. And it's great because all the locals, the little old ladies and everything, are used to students. They get used to them. And they don't mind that they make a bit of noise occasionally and what have you. They were probably a student once themselves. I remember in Dunedin it snowed once, which it does occasionally down there, and there was a bunch of students hiding behind a big hedge, and with snowballs waiting to ambush people. And this little old lady I saw spotted them. So she went out of her way to go around and approach them from behind. And they were all there waiting to ambush this little old lady, with the shopping bags and everything. And suddenly she's heaving snowballs at them from behind. And they turn around, speaking of their mates, and it's this sort of 70-year-old lady in the time of her life.
Brilliant.
So, I'm all for students. Now, what's going to happen in terms of education? We probably only need one school teacher for every year and every topic, the best one in Australia, and do it online, and all the rest can be find something else for them to do. But it remains to be seen whether schools and universities in particular go back to what it was.
Yeah, I hope they do at some point, because it does students create a different type of vibrancy to a city, so it's important to have that mix.
Yes, it is. I'm sure. Yes, we don't want everybody learning online and what have you. You've got to soak up a bit of the unemployment by employing people as school teachers. We lost the vote from all the school teachers, but never mind.
So we have a question from David here, and it's kind of a two-part question that he's asked. But the first part of it is, do you intend to perform your duties as a full-time mayor or a part-time, like some others who have expressed interest in the position?
Yeah. No, and one of my platforms is that I'll be 100% devoted to it. There is some research on people who've become mayors. They go around and ask them, and a number of people have said that they intended to do it part-time and keep up their business interests or whatever their day job is, but they found, much to their dismay, that it is in fact a full-time job now. Yeah. I know there's some candidates who have an expectation that it's a part-time job, and certainly as far as the Local Government Act provides, there's no prescribed hours or anything. But it does say that you have to attend the meetings. Now, there's only one formal meeting a month, and I suppose you could just attend that. But I don't intend to be a part-time mayor. I will be devoting 110% of my time and energy to it. There's a lot of information to deal with, which is what I'm used to, assimilating a lot of facts and making sense out of it all and making a proper decision in a timely manner. So I'll be there 100%, if not more.
Excellent. And the other part of his question, you have sort of answered it previously, but there is one little bit in there. So the question was, will a council with you as mayor be democratic, transparent, and keep ratepayers informed and included in media in this process? So the previous council has not allowed media access to some information. Then this was followed by a non-elected council resembling, in David's words, a dictatorship. So is that something that's important to you about keeping everyone informed?
Yes, well, it's part of good governance, the transparency. And what I've done, given I'm retired, is it's possible, of course, to attend meetings of councils around Australia thanks to technology, particularly with the COVID-19. Now they're all Zooming. So I've attended a number of meetings, including the Perth City Council meeting of the 28th of April, in which, of course, the Commissioner, Andrew Hammond, spoke very highly of the East Perth Community Group. He said that in his many years of experience, they're the best community group that he's come across. And what it was important was he's saying that they actually work with the council, whereas a lot of community groups, they're called the Ratepayers Association, and their job is to stand against the council and be all bitter and twisted. But the East Perth Community Group, of course, are as one with the council and their staff, and things get done. And
they do.
Council saw fit to hand over $34,000 of ratepayers' money to the
ratepayer.
Hand them their money back.
Yeah.
So spend it wisely and enjoy it. It's your money.
Yeah.
So coming back to the point I was making, I've listened to a number of meetings of all the different councils, and Queensland's so weird that you don't even want to look at that. It's like a state government up there. There's 32 members, and they're all political, and they spend all their time thanking each other for thanking them, and aren't they all marvellous? Complete waste of space, the way they do it up there. But everybody else has got a modern council. That is, it's an odd number, usually 8 councillors. Sometimes they're called aldermen for whatever reason. I'm not sure what that's all about, but that's what they do in Melbourne, I think it is. And the mayor and a deputy mayor, which is the mayor's usually elected by the ratepayers or the voters, and the deputy mayor is chosen by the council. And the meetings are all quite different. And they, in the main, particularly in Sydney, it's like a play. It's like a very bad school play, in as much that they all just read out and they all know what everybody else has got. And each objection and what have you is, it's ridiculous. There's no decisions being made. The decisions have already been made, and it's all just a matter of, making a transcript, as it were. And of course, the Perth City Council with the 3 commissioners, they quite rightly chat about things beforehand, and they really just, as a formality, the meeting on the 28th, that was 30 minutes and 37 seconds, which is a great length of time for a meeting, and they dealt with so many things. But of course, you had no idea as to how they saw things and why they did this instead of that. So my approach would be that the councils would be streamed live. The technology is there, and the record kept so that you can look at it at any time. And rather than just be a set piece where everybody is just reading their lines, it would be discussed beforehand, so you knew what the topics were, and you could go and look at things and consider things and talk to the relevant people if you wish. But the real decision is made at the council meeting. Now, the danger with that is that they drag on and become a waste of time. Everyone gets bored. But it's a matter of keeping things focused and getting people to set out clearly why they've adopted the position they have. And my hope is that council meetings become a live matter. They're a reasonable length. They'll be informative, and people will actually go away with the feeling that everybody's position was considered, and the decisions that were made have some reason attached to it.
It's a really good point.
So if you ever get bored, which a lot of people are these days, been sitting at home doing nothing, feel free to go and look at all the different councils around Australia and look at their meetings. You'll find it hilarious. The meeting on the 28th, Commissioner Hammond is doing his thing there, and suddenly a big ginger cat who was sitting there got bored after about 10 minutes and got up and indignantly strode across the screen and disappeared. And Commissioner McMath was in the middle of saying her piece, given that there's only three of them there, the chair, and one has to move and one has to second, and it's all agreed unanimously and what have you. It's all just a formality. Suddenly, it sounded like a Sherman tank coming down the road, and it was in fact her printer just behind her that had clanked into gear, and you couldn't hear anything. So we had to wait while she got up and gave the thing a bit of a kick in the right place and managed to silence it back to it. Now, it's only a small thing, but it sort of makes you see that everything's real. And
absolutely, and everyone has a character and everyone has a personality behind the formalities.
Yeah, so if people want me for mayor, it'll be live and it'll be relevant. That is, it won't be reading from the script. It'll be making proper decisions in real time.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. And the last question I have is from a local East Perth business. And it's just a question around how are you going to look to help businesses with tourism or any business, in fact, establish themselves in the city after sort of all the COVID stuff has sort of cleared and we're back on the normal path? How will you help them, and what will you do in terms of, if you were elected as the Lord Mayor, how would you help? A lot of people feel that at the moment they get turned away or they can't be helped. So what would you do to help those businesses?
Well, it depends what their particular issue is, but if they're requiring people to come into their business, parking is a clear thing, and of course the City of Perth Commission has recognised that, and you get 3 hours free parking now, which is hopefully enough time to do your business or do a quick shop and maybe have a bit of lunch and what have you. Well, that's how it was before COVID-19.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of dealing with each individual thing, and of course come back to the point that it's not for me as the mayor to come up with all the bright ideas. It's for me to go out and through community groups and through workshops, find out what it is people want. Now, of course, there's a number of fees that businesses have to pay. The coffee shops that pay to use the pavement and all that. A number of those fees need to be reduced, as indeed the council has. They've agreed on $6 million worth of concessions to encourage small businesses, and those are the sorts of things that need to be done. And people given a rental holiday until they get established, and the like. So I don't have any preconceived ideas about how that should all be done. It's a matter of relying on the energy and of the council. As I say again, the mayor doesn't decide anything by themselves. It's all a matter of steering the council to a unanimous, hopefully considered decision in the interests of everybody.
Lovely. That's great. Thank you so much for that, Tim. Do you have any other questions or queries or anything that you wish to share with us today, any information? Because we've actually neared the end of our interview.
Well, there was only one thing, of course, and there's been some comment about the appointment of a CEO, Michelle Reynolds, starting on the 4th of August. Mm-hmm. A number of commentators have said that should have been left for the council. My view is that it's a sensible thing to do, given the delay. The sooner the CEO gets on the ground and gets to grip with what's going on. My only concern was that she doesn't appear to have any experience in local government. Now, that may not matter, given that the CEO's job has probably changed out of all recognition with the COVID-19, and the issues before the council are completely different. And I've no doubt, given her involvement with state government, she's well aware of how the law works, and went to get a legal opinion and get someone to explain it to her if that is necessary. I suspect that she's well aware and is probably a bush lawyer herself, and probably quite familiar with how the law works.
Lovely. Oh, thank you so much for that, Tim. So last but not least, members, I just wanted to remind you, keep an eye out on the City Sessions page in the next coming days, because we will have some more information we wish to disclose to you about some new streaming locations that will be the finale of the City Session. So make sure you take part through our social media streams for this socially distanced event. So it's the last one. I'd like to thank Tim again for joining us today. Sorry for the delays earlier, but I'm sure this is a really great interview that you're going to have to get your teeth into and listen to and take that time out. So thank you all for listening, and thank you, Tim, for joining us.
Yes, it's a pleasure. It was a test of both our nerves, the technical problems, and you rose to the occasion.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye,
You too.
everybody.